and begin hacking their hostages to pieces.
Oh my goodness.
Screams fill the night air as John Brown draws his pistol and fires a round point blank into James Doyle's forehead.
John is nasty with it. Extreme vigilante justice in history.
We're going over stories of people who went to extreme lengths to take justice into their own hands.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the one who determine if it's extreme or not.
John Brown.
John Brown? Nah, we rocking with John.
It's 1812, and a 12-year-old boy named John Brown is delivering a herd of cattle that he'd just driven over 100 miles to the home of a U.S. Marshal.
Okay.
The Marshal is impressed that such a young boy was able to do this all alone and invites him to stay with him for a few days before making the trek back to Ohio.
He's gonna take all his stuff away.
John is tired from the journey, and the Marshal seems friendly, so he agrees.
Yeah, he said seems friendly. The Marshal taking all his credit.
John sees a boy around his age dressed in ragged clothing.
Yeah.
He excitedly rushes over to introduce himself, and the boy, though nervous at first, eventually warms up, and the two begin to play together. This boy was smart.
Is he gonna give the Marshal slave blicked? Is that what's gonna happen?
Kind, and gives John some things that he'd made as gifts. Soon it's dinner time, and the Marshal calls for John to join him, and the guests he invited at the table. John's new friend serves them while the Marshal praises John in front of his friends. This boy drove all that cattle out there over 100 miles all by himself. He beams.
Where did John come from? Because no way John don't know about slavery. He's 12 years old. Where did John come from? Who is John's parents?
If John were his own son. The dinner is wonderful, filled with laughter, and eventually the guests leave to head home. John is smiling, full and content. But as the Marshal closes the door behind the last of his guests, a dark scowl emerges on his face. He turns to John's friend, the boy, and he begins berating him for the mistakes he had made during dinner service. The boy is terrified as the Marshal walks to the fireplace and grabs
gonna throw coal on him?
shovel.
No way he
Without
beat him with the
hesitation,
shovel.
The Marshal turns and begins viciously beating the boy with it.
Oh my.
John watches helplessly as his friend is hit over and over again. The sound of the shovel ringing out against
Is he gonna
his skull
stop?
echoes in the room.
Do you want him alive?
The boy's blood
I guess
as
not.
It begins to pour from a
I
wound
guess
on
not.
his head.
Live.
In that moment,
Right.
the cruelty of the world his parents had warned him about becomes crystal
Where
clear.
are your parents?
The Browns were Calvinists, and they had told John that slavery was an abomination against God. Though
Right.
he'd heard those words countless times, this night was the first time he had seen its horrors with his own two eyes. At that moment,
the
John
world?
Brown silently decides there is no greater evil in the world than slavery, and that he'll wage an eternal war to end
talk
it.
to me, John.
The 1800s in
I do
America were
100% remember going over this in history class. I just don't remember the details of it, but I do remember the story of John Brown, like just being taught it.
Very uneasy period, to say the least. Tensions between the northern free states and southern slave states were rapidly
Because I'm pretty sure,
escalating,
he set a lot of slaves free, and he had like a little revolution thing going on, but I can't remember the in-depth part of it.
his father, an abolitionist, had begun helping escaped southern slaves by sheltering them as they made their way through the Underground Railroad.
Talk to him.
Because of this upbringing, John had learned to treat every person of color with dignity and respect. And so everywhere he went, he was quick to befriend freed slaves and Native Americans. At the age of 16, he set out to make it on his own.
He should have took his cattle back though. That's what he should have did.
He moved from city to city, trying his hand at various businesses, all of which seemed to fail eventually. He popped out 20 kids between 2 wives, and
John Brown, what are you doing? Wrap up!
perhaps most importantly to him, he did whatever he could to help slaves escape to a better life in the North. In 1829, Brown was
starting his own army to free the
operating a
slaves.
secret safe house for the Underground Railroad in Pennsylvania. One day, some neighboring white families came over and asked for his help in driving out some Native Americans from their lands.
Oh, yeah.
Disgusted
They
by
went to the wrong
request,
house.
He answered back, "I would sooner take up my gun and help drive you out of the country."
Oh my goodness. No way they don't gang up on him. No way they
As much
don't.
as John Brown hated racism, half of the country felt exactly the opposite way. Slaves were essential to the economy in the South, and with the 3/5 Compromise of 1787, which classified slaves as 3/5 of a person, Southern states quickly gained
craziest
disproportionate
thing,
political
bro.
power in Congress. This led to the passing of the
craziest thing to
Fugitive
hear.
Slave Act in 1850, which required Northerners to capture and return escaped slaves to their owners. Upon hearing the news, John Brown could not believe a law so heinous was passed. And
And what you about to do about it, John?
He questioned if the pacifist views held by his fellow abolitionists would be enough to bring the changes required to
Oh, so he been working with pacifist Nastisteism. He needed that switch flipped. Okay.
the wrongs being done in this country. In response, he forms a group called the League of Gileadites, an armed group who defended escaped slaves from slave
Gileadites?
catchers.
I don't like that
They
name.
are successful, but as hard as he tries, Brown can see that the future of the country is growing increasingly grim. In 1854, Congress passes the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which left the decision on whether those territories join the Union as a free state or a slave state up to a popular vote. Immediately, pro- and anti-slavery settlers rushed to Kansas to try to sway the voting in their favor.
Okay.
And amongst the anti-slavery settlers were
You already know
of
John
Brown's sons.
5 of his kids. Like I said, bro, he made his own mini army with him. He made his own mini army. Yo, John Brown breeding the woke. That's what he doing, bro. Absolute goat.
More pro-slavery settlers pour in from Missouri and begin terrorizing anti-slavery settlements.
Oh my
and Brown's
goodness.
sons write to him asking him to come to Kansas to help the cause. Initially, he refuses, but by October of 1855, John cannot turn a blind eye to the possibility of another slave state joining the Union, and so he loads up a wagon of rifles, pistols, and swords and heads west to help his
And
sons.
swords?
Kansas was primed as a political powder
Where's
keg
his wives at? He had 2 wives. I want to know what they think about all this.
ready to explode. And though he did not know it at the time, John Brown would be the one to light the match. On May 21st of 1856, a pro-slavery group sacked the anti-slavery city of Lawrence, Kansas, and the following day, pro-slavery representative Preston Brooks savagely beat Senator Charles
This
Sumner
is
with a
terrible
cane
PR
on
for Preston. Preston, horrible
the
PR.
Senate floor after he'd given an anti-slavery speech. The 1-2 combo of the sacking of Lawrence and the caning of Sumner breaks something inside of the 55-year-old John Brown. His whole life, he had hoped
55?
the South would eventually see that slavery was morally wrong. But now he realizes this was nothing but a fool's dream.
Which is crazy. Like, you're living in a country and you're like, we're objectively doing something horrible. How can half the country not see this? like it does not take a huge brain to see what is going on is terrible. How are y'all ignoring this? We have these group of people and we're saying they're not fully human. It takes 3 of them to be a human, or no, each one of them is like 3/5 of a human or whatever. You know what I'm saying? What are we doing?
The so-called abolitionists in the North were all cowards. They do nothing but talk. Slavery must end by any means necessary. If no one else will do it, then he will deliver God's judgment himself.
It makes you think, like, what's gonna change in 50 years from now, where it's like we saw something and we're like, oh, why did we not notice how stupid or terrible this was, and why didn't we do about it? And then 50 years later we're gonna be like, oh, okay, we probably should have fixed that 50 years ago.
And so, on the night of May 24th, 1856, John brings a group made up of his sons and fellow abolitionists to the home of pro-slavery settler James P. Doyle and demands that he and his sons come out.
Ooh,
Doyle
are you about to
and 2 of
murk
his
the
adult
family?
children nervously comply, and they are led 100 yards into the darkness. The group of men walk
they ever seen
silently
again?
in the light of the moon until Brown's 2 sons turn towards the Doyles and draw broadswords. Cold and emotionless, they raise their weapons and begin hacking their hostages to pieces.
Oh my goodness.
Screams fill the night air as John Brown draws his pistol and fires a round point blank into James Doyle's forehead,
John is nasty with it.
finishing him off. The Brown party traveled to 2 more houses that night and executed 2 more
Oh my
pro-slavery settlers.
goodness.
John Brown was now a murderer, and this event, known as the Potawatomi Massacre, kicked off a state-level civil war that would be called Bleeding Kansas.
Talk to him,
Brown
John.
quickly becomes public enemy number 1 amongst the pro-slavery settlers in the territory, and warrants are put out for his capture, dead or alive. But Brown does not back down, and he leads his anti-slavery militia in multiple battles.
He has like 5 or 6 of his kids here. I want to know what the other 14 are doing. Like, does he just have a scholar in the North somewhere? Does he have a billionaire child somewhere who's just chilling? Does he have a slave owner child? Like, I want to know what the other billions of kids are doing.
Across Kansas against pro-slavery forces, becoming a highly polarizing national figure. By the end of the year, the anti-slavery settlers in Kansas seemed to have turned the tide, and it was looking like Kansas would eventually join the Union as a free state. Leading Kansas had not been easy for John as he lost one of his sons in the violence.
Honestly,
and with the increasing bounties being put on his
I'm surprised he only lost one.
He decides to leave the area as a wanted man. By
I
his
thought he
exit from
only
Kansas,
lost one.
His deeds had turned him into a household name. Many in the North called him a hero fighting for justice, while in the South, he was branded as a deranged lunatic. But what John Brown planned to do next would make all the previous events appear small in comparison.
Did he go around burning houses
The
down?
course of American history forever. In August of 1859, John meets his longtime friend, escaped slave and activist Frederick Douglass in an abandoned stone quarry in Pennsylvania.
This is why I've heard about John Brown. I think we were taught about John Brown through being taught about Frederick Douglass.
Now a wanted man, the meeting is done in secrecy with just a few in attendance. After exchanging pleasantries, Brown tells his old friend about a plan he'd been working on for years. Inspired by the story of Moses, who led the slaves out of Egypt in the Bible, and the tales of Spartacus, a slave who had led a slave rebellion against the mighty Roman Empire, Brown believed deep in his heart that the slaves in the United States, if provided the opportunity and proper means, would rise up against their oppressors and
have
take
them
their
up pole
freedom for themselves. Douglass cannot believe what he's hearing as Brown continues to share his plan to raid the federal armory at Harper's Ferry, Virginia, and incite an insurrection of slaves against their owners. Douglass desperately pleads with his friend not to do this. Attacking a federal building would be a suicide mission. But Brown pushes.
Tom was like, hold up. You don't want a box? Because I'm a box. I'm gonna let bullets fly. Frederick, you know what? You can watch from the sidelines. Let me show you how it's done.
His back, saying that he's now realized his purpose. He is an instrument of God, and this act would serve as notice to all slaves in America that their friends had come. As they part ways, Brown turns to his friend and tries one last time. Come with me, Douglass. I will defend you with my life. Douglass shakes his head, but an escaped slave who had accompanied him to the meeting is moved by Brown's words.
He was like, hold up. Why Douglass moving kind of weak? Hold on, now I'm trying to catch a body.
to join him on his mission. Frederick Douglass smiles weakly at his dear friends, shakes their hands, and says goodbye. And so, in the dark of the night on October 16, 1859, John Brown and 18 of the 22 men he had brought with him sneak into Harper's Ferry and cut the telegraph lines into the town. They quickly seize the federal arsenal and take the commanding officer, Lewis Washington, George Washington's great-grandnephew, hostage. Everything is going exactly to plan. The arsenal contained over 100,000 rifles and muskets, more than enough to fuel any slave uprising. Now all they had to do was wait for them to come and join them. But instead of reaching the slaves he had hoped for,
it did not. I'm pretty sure they all died in the process, if I'm not mistaken.
Capture of the arsenal spreads much more quickly to militias in nearby towns, who all race to Harper's Ferry. By the following day, Brown's raiders find themselves surrounded. He had waited too long for an army of slaves that never showed up, and now he was trapped. Firefights break.
He was like, hey guys, we gonna die today, but at least we need to go out with a 2 KD bare minimum. Bare minimum, we need 2 bodies. Everyone needs 2 bodies to their name.
Flee into the nearby fire engine house with their hostages. By nightfall, President Buchanan orders a detachment of U.S. Marines to Harper's Ferry and commands Army Colonel Robert E. Lee to lead them to retake the armory. On October 17th, after a failed negotiation, Colonel Lee orders the Marines to storm the fire engine house. Within minutes, John Brown was wounded and captured, and 8 of his men, including his sons, were dead. Brown is charged with treason against the Commonwealth of Virginia, murder, and inciting an insurrection. His case is expedited.
AKA, he's charged for being an absolute goat. So that's what I'm hearing.
He's found guilty on all charges. When asked if he had anything to say, John Brown rises from his seat and eloquently begins a speech, denying any wrongdoing and saying that if his same actions had benefited the rich instead of the enslaved, he would have been rewarded rather than punished. He closes his statement with the following words. Now, if it is deemed necessary that I should—
His voice changed to do this is hilarious.
—forfeit my life for the furtherance of the ends of justice and mingle my blood further with the blood of my children, and with the blood of millions in this slave country.
You know, one thing about anytime where someone has to give a speech, even though they're not known for being a speaker, for example, John's not known for being a speaker. You're telling me he got up there, he said all this off the dome and didn't stutter? He didn't stutter once?
Whose rights are disregarded by wicked, cruel, and unjust enactments, I submit. So let it be done. John Brown was hanged for his crimes on December 2nd, 1859. In the crowd that gathered to watch his execution were U.S. soldiers Stonewall Jackson and Jeb Stuart, men who would later fight for the Confederacy against the country they had sworn to protect. Also watching from afar is John Wilkes Booth, the man who would later assassinate President Abraham Lincoln. John Brown makes no speech that day, but instead hands a small note
this was you got a nasty audience up there, bro.
Piece of paper to his jailer as he walks up to the galley. I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away, but with blood. I had, as I now think,
I want to know what Frederick was thinking at this time.
That without very much bloodshed, it might be done. And John Brown was prophetically right. His raid on Harper's Ferry equally stirred the hearts of abolitionists to the north and terrified slave owners in the south, who rapidly began to push for secession from the United States. In just over a year, the American Civil War began, and 750,000 Americans will die in the war to end slavery. As they marched throughout the country, Union soldiers began singing a song they called John Brown's Body as a rallying call. What began as a joke with crude lyrics evolved into a song detailing the life of a man who would...
I want to know, like, is his two wives like, man, I'm so proud, and they're just like, oh, my husband's gone. Like, are they happy he died the way he did, like going out the way he did? I'm so curious. I'm so curious about the side characters, like how the side characters viewed him. You know what I mean?
Everything he had to end what he considered the greatest sin of his nation. This song was eventually rewritten into the Battle Hymn of the Republic, or as it is more commonly known, Glory, Glory, Hallelujah. Gary Plauché. It's 1983 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Gary Plauché...
I don't know Gary Plauché. Talk to me. Teach me something nice. We in Louisiana with it.
...driving his 10-year-old son Jody to karate practice. Jody's been training under his 24-year-old instructor, Jeffrey Doucette. And
okay, so Jeffrey Doucette is gonna like break his son's arm, and then he's gonna be like, oh, you break my son's arm? I'm gonna kill your family.
Gary is proud of how much his son's improved. But at the same time, Gary feels bad for the guy. See, Jeff seems like a good guy, but he's struggling financially. So much so that it's pretty obvious he's been living at his karate dojo.
Oh, okay.
So, wanting to help him out, Gary starts inviting Jeff over for dinner and occasionally lets him stay the night.
Oh,
Over the next few months, Jeff becomes a close family friend.
No.
To Jody, it was awesome having a cool older friend around so often. The two start spending a lot of time together, going to movies and traveling to different cities for karate tournaments. And to Gary, it was great that his son had a positive role model that he could trust to keep Jeff safe.
Or so he thought. Wait, what? I saw the text. I saw the text. He did something to Jody.
Model that he could trust to keep Jeff safe.
Keep Jody. Okay, never mind.
But that trust was about to be broken in the most horrific way imaginable. On February 14th, 1984, Jeff asks Gary's wife if he can borrow her car to visit his uncle and if Jody can come along for the ride. She doesn't see anything wrong with this, so she hands over the keys and tells them to have fun. A few hours later, Jeff calls and says they decided to stay the night at his uncle's place and will be back the next day.
And it's crazy because they fully trust him. I mean, yeah, you should not invite a stranger into your house and like let them live there. That's crazy to me. But they've already they've acclimated to him being a part of the day-to-day life, and it's just like, oh man, there's nothing to worry about. Like, he's family now. He's been here for like forever, you know.
But when the next day comes and goes with no sign of Jeff or Jody, Gary and his wife start to worry that something terrible may have happened. They contact the police, who begin searching for the boy and his instructor. But despite their efforts, there's still no trace of either of them.
Yeah, you better
turn into days, and Gary's
guns
worry
need to be
slowly
bought.
Turns into
The
dread
anger.
that the worst has happened. The police soon launch a countrywide search to bring Jody back home.
Search.
And all the while, Gary can't stop imagining all the horrible things that may have happened to his son. 2 weeks pass with no signs of Jody or Jeff, and the terrifying possibility that he may never see his son again begins to feel very real to Gary. But on February 29th, Gary's wife receives a collect call
leap year, the 29th? That has to be important.
In Anaheim, California. When she picks up the phone, she hears Jody's voice on the other end. Thank God, he's alive! The police quickly trace the call and pinpoint Jody's exact location. 30 minutes later, Anaheim police storm into the Samoa Hotel, where they find Jody with Jeff in one of the rooms. They immediately arrest Jeff and take him into custody. As the officers questioned him, it turns out that after visiting his uncle, Jeff drove all the way to California and took Jody to see things like Hollywood and Disneyland while keeping him locked away in a motel at night.
Okay, so how is the dad gonna get revenge? Because technically, shouldn't he be like locked up for a pretty long time? Is he gonna get like a slap on the wrist and then dad comes and murks him? Like, what are you talking about? You kidnapped the son to see Disneyland? Huh?
The very next day, the police take Jody back home to Louisiana. When Gary sees his son step off that plane, he rushes over and is relieved to have him back home safe and sound. Over the next few days, he struggles with the fact that someone he trusted so deeply, someone he welcomed into his home, had kidnapped his boy. But the reality of what actually happened turns out to be false. I
was about to say at least nothing bad happened. I'm about to be proven. Like, is he gonna have like multiple fractures or something?
More disturbing when Jody is taken for a medical examination.
STDs?
The police soon informed Gary and his wife that Jeff was not the man they thought he was. The examinations of Jody's body showed that while they were in California, Jeff had done some absolutely disgusting things to him. The detectives assigned to the case.
Okay, so I'm just gonna have to make assumptions since they're not telling me. I'm just gonna have to make the weird assumptions because they didn't tell me anything.
Interview the little boy, and he tells them that Jeff had been molesting him for over a year.
The whole time?
He was too scared to tell anyone this entire time because he did not want to lose his friend. When Gary hears this, his whole world shatters. He feels overwhelming guilt that he had put his son into such a horrible situation. But soon, this guilt
turns into rage.
And something inside him snaps. He decides that he cannot allow this monster any opportunity to get away with destroying his son's childhood, and will do whatever it takes to make sure justice is served. Jeff is charged with aggravated kidnapping and child molestation and is held in California while Louisiana authorities prepare the paperwork to bring him back to stand trial. But as the days pass and Gary waits for the criminal proceedings to begin, his rage continues to build.
Yeah, like how does he get his get back though?
No punishment the courts could come up with would ever be enough.
Where is he gonna catch him lacking at?
For days, he visits a local bar, trying to drink his suffering away. And one night, a friend working at a local
I feel bad for his wife though, because he's about to catch a body, get sent to prison, and so now the wife has to be home alone with their child who ended up being assaulted because it's not just the dad's fault, both the mom and dad had to welcome the guy in. And you know, so she's left alone raising a child that she's like, dang, if I didn't allow this man in my home, my child wouldn't have got assaulted, you know? So she about to go through it.
The station happened to stop by and saw him. After making pleasantries, his friend casually mentions that his newsroom had heard that Jeff Doucette will be flown back to Louisiana on March 16th on American Airlines Flight 595.
He told him everything?
Upon hearing those words, Gary's eyes widen. He now knew exactly what he needed to do. On March 16th, Gary walks into
he's doing it in public too, in front of everybody. Other dudes should be considered an accomplice. Oh my gosh.
Sunglasses. He stands at a row of payphones in the main corridor and calls his best friend. As news crews arrive to film the return of Jeffrey Doucette, Gary keeps his head turned away from the cameras. Around 9:30 p.m., the police
you're not getting away with this.
Towards the main corridor.
It's going to be obvious who you are.
Near the row of payphones, Gary tells his friend who is still on the line, "You're about to hear a shot," and drops the receiver.
There's real footage of this? Is there really? What's this guy named? Gary something? Gary Pluchet, he popped up.
Meet Gary Pluchet, a Louisiana man who shot his son's S-word abuser in the head on live TV in March 1984. His son
1984? I got the times mixed up because I thought this was earlier, and then I thought this was early 1900s. I'm not gonna lie. I see the payphones they were walking beside.
One fluid motion, he draws a revolver from his pocket, turns and fires a single bullet straight into Jeff's head as he's walking by.
Goodness.
The police are shocked as they watch the man they were just escorting tumble to the ground. The officers rush in and grab the assassin and instantly recognize who he is.
Excuse me if I'm not focusing on the important parts. He has a gun, he shot somebody, killed them, and and they rushed in and restricted him. They didn't try to, they restricted, right? Okay, that just confused me a little bit, because I just figured like if they have there's someone with a gun in the airport and they shot somebody, you would think that they would try to take him down immediately, like what and try to put him right. Okay, that's.
He is. One of them screams, "Gary, why? Why, Gary?"
They know Gary?
Pry the gun from his hand. Gary doesn't resist as the officers arrest him. Jeff is taken to the hospital in a coma, but dies the following day. The assassination was filmed live as it happened directly in front of the local news crews at the airport. And the graphic images of the execution quickly become national news.
That's crazy.
As brutal a crime as was committed, many throughout the country identified with the father's desperate quest for revenge. Gary is tried for second-degree murder, but accepts a plea bargain in which he pleaded no contest to manslaughter. The judge ruled that there was virtually no risk of Gary committing any other crime, so he's only given a 7-year suspended sentence, 5 years of probation, and 300 hours of community service.
Okay, so he's sent for 7 years. After the 7 years, he gets 5 years of probation.
He never goes to prison.
I mean, good, but I'm just, okay, good, but I would have never assumed that. Bro caught a body on camera and didn't go to prison? I get it, but I just wouldn't, I would have never predicted. I'm gonna keep it a buck. The judge probably looked like, before they went to the court hearing, whatever, the judge probably looked at their kid, they were like, you know what, Gary? He didn't really do nothing wrong. That's what happened right before the court hearing. Judge looked right at his kids.
When he was later questioned why he shot Jeffrey Doucette,
Question? Hey, so why did you shoot your child's assaulter? I just can't put it together. Why would you do such a thing?
Gary simply replied, "If somebody did it to your kid, you'd do it too." San Francisco Committee of Vigilance.
Whoa, what is this?
It's 1848, and a man named Sam Brannon is visiting his newly opened store in what's now modern-day Sacramento. Just a few years earlier, Brannon, a Latter-day Saint, had fled religious persecution on the East Coast and ended up in California in a tiny port town that's now known as San Francisco.
Okay.
In his short time on the West Coast, he had started a newspaper, a flour mill, and now had just opened his first general store. Things are going pretty good for this young entrepreneur, but little did he know that his life would soon be changed forever as a few rough-looking men entered his store looking to purchase some supplies. These men had come from Sutter's Mill up in Coloma. They pick out a few goods and bring them up to the counter to purchase. Brannon tells them what they owe, and instead of handing over coins, one of the men opens a leather pouch and pours a pile of gold dust onto a scale. Brannon can't believe his eyes. Who has so much gold that they can pay for things like this? So he makes a trip to Coloma to investigate what's going on at Sutter's Mill. He speaks to some
bro saw so much money, he was like, hold up. Oh, the gold rush. Is that what's happening? It's the gold rush. When did he say, what year was this?
It's 1848, and a man...
1848, 1849 is the gold rush. Got you.
Just a few years earlier, Brannon, a Latter-day Saint, had fled religious persecution on the East Coast and ended up in California.
I didn't even see that when we first watched it. He was fleeing a religious persecution? What did he do?
Workers there and finds out that they found gold in the American River. Tons of it. The men tell him there's so much gold here that all the people in California working together couldn't take it out in 50 years.
Oh my gosh.
Dollar signs
yeah, you know that's cap.
In Brandon's eyes. But instead of brainlessly jumping into the river to find gold himself,
he
crafts what is perhaps
the
greatest marketing stunt
Yep, shovels, pickaxes.
Brandon returns to San Francisco
and
quickly begins purchasing every single pickaxe, shovel, and gold pan he can find.
Monopolizing.
He all to his store in Sacramento, and
I think I remember this story.
Price these items at extreme markups.
I'm pretty sure this is also something I learned in history class. Another story I don't remember the full details of, but we were taught the gold rush. Like, cause you know the 49ers, San Francisco 49ers, you know what I mean? Okay.
He then puts the gold dust he had received as payment into a glass bottle and steps out onto the streets of San Francisco. He holds up the bottle and loudly shouts, "Gold! Gold on the American River!" And the townspeople stop their daily routines and turn to look. He holds out the bottle, and as it sparkles in the sun, he continues to shout his message over and over again. "Gold on the American River!"
Easiest
Brandon's
marketing of
plan
all
works,
time, bro.
And the news spreads through the town
He
like
started the
wildfire.
gold rush.
In a very
He made the
short amount of
movement.
time, nearly 75% of the men in San Francisco raced east to try to strike it rich. On their way to Coloma, they all stop at the only store with
Breaded.
tools along the way.
Oh my goodness, so
Brandon's
breaded.
General Store in Sacramento. In the first 9
He's gonna-
weeks of the
he's
gold
gonna get
rush,
robbed
Brandon
something
makes
nasty, though.
$36,000, an equivalent of $1.4 million today. And he
Oh yeah, he's getting robbed. He gonna get robbed like a
quickly
mug.
becomes the richest man in California. But while Brandon's
Oh,
marketing stuff
he's breaded.
worked out better than he could have ever imagined, it led to some unintended consequences. News of gold in California spread throughout the world, and by 1850, San Francisco had exploded from a small port town of less than 1,000 people to a city of over 25,000.
And now it's a city full of the craziest roads I've ever seen.
Massive boom of fortune seekers brought unprecedented levels of crime and lawlessness, and the local government with its small police force just couldn't keep up. Gangs of thieves and murderers
Oh my
begin
goodness.
to roam the streets of San Francisco freely without any fear. The worst of these criminals are the Sydney Ducks, a ruthless
Sydney Ducks? Come on, yeah. Like y'all could have went a little harder than that. Come on now, let's be for real.
gang of ex-cons from Australia. They set fires to buildings
From
to distract the
Australia?
police while they loot businesses, and anyone
my
caught in their
goodness.
way often ended up dead. On the rare occasions the police managed to catch them,
They just got bribed?
bribed corrupt officials.
Oh
and
my goodness. So they just letting them do anything for bread. Anything. They were letting everything slide.
walk out of jail scot-free. On May 4th, 1851, a fire set by the Sydney Ducks burned down around 2,000 buildings, which was more than half the entire city and caused over $10 million in damages. Brandon watched that fire rip
gotta
through the
leave.
city,
You
and
gotta
he
leave.
decides that enough is enough.
You need to leave.
On June 9th, 1851, he brings together a group of well-known citizens and
No!
businessmen. He tells them that the police are worthless and that
No. Get your money and switch states. You're rich. No, leave. Ah,
if they
brother.
want the crime to stop in their town, they would need to take justice into their own hands.
Yeah, nah.
Everyone in attendance agrees. And
Nah.
so on that night, they form a committee of vigilance to take back their city from these criminals.
I disagree.
Conveniently, this committee did not have to wait long to take action. The very next day, a member of the Sydney Ducks steals a safe from a merchant's office. The members of the newly formed Vigilante group immediately track him down and hold a public trial. After finding
A
him guilty,
public
they
trial?
hang him in front of a crowd of spectators.
Bro, nah, like the 1850s, bro. That was just America was still a jungle. Cause what do you mean public trial by some randoms? Nah, America was still a jungle, bro. I mean, obviously slavery was still around, but golly, I'm saying like without slavery, it was still a jungle.
News of the trial and hanging quickly spreads through the city. Business owners who've had their shops looted and families who've lost loved ones to gang violence all realize they now have a way to fight back. And within weeks, the committee grows to over 700
Where's the
members
black people?
strong.
My fault. Like
Over
I
the-
just stated why there's no black people here. Like what? I just stated we're in the 1850s.
Next 3 months, the committee hunts down every known criminal in San Francisco. They execute a total of 4 men and
No,
deport
now this was actually vigilante type work.
dozens more out of the city.
This was
Committee's
actually vigilante
extreme
work.
actions prove effective, and by September 1851, crime has dropped.
Because they could just do it out in the open and nobody cared. You know what I'm saying? Like John Brown's vigilante, it was like half the country doesn't agree with him. So he's not able to just do it in the open. Him, the whole city like, hey, do what you do. We don't care. Okay.
so dramatically in San Francisco that for the first time in years, people begin to of William, who, by the way,
James
called
Kings of
himself that to
William?
distinguish himself from all the other James Kings in San Francisco, began printing
What?
a newspaper called the Daily Evening Bulletin. and begins publicly calling out
Corrupt
corrupt
officials?
government officials.
Uh-oh.
On May 4th, 1856,
Wait, where's our main character
King
at?
writes about a city supervisor named James Casey and exposes him as a convicted criminal who had once served time for grand theft before buying his way into public office.
Where's
a few
our
days later,
where's
he
our
writes
main character?
another article targeting a man named Charles Cora, a wealthy gambler who shot and killed a U.S. Marshal in cold blood. King demands the immediate hanging of Cora and calls out the court for delaying his trial to protect him. Cora and Casey happen to be friends, unsurprisingly.
Wow, shocker.
And not enjoying the recent publicity King has been giving them, Casey decides to fix this problem for good. On May 14, 1856, James King of William is walking down the street when Casey suddenly blocks his path. Casey menacingly asks the publisher,
Yo, Casey
"Are
needs
you
to
armed?"
need to grow
And
his
before
hair.
King can respond, he shouts, "Well, draw and defend yourself," and unloads a bullet directly into King's chest.
Are you sure that's what he said? Who overheard that? Who knows what he said?
King collapses onto the pavement and blood begins soaking through his clothes. Some bystanders rush him into a nearby office where doctors immediately
he
start
survived.
fighting to keep him alive.
He survived. That's how he was
Casey is
able to know
arrested
this.
and taken to jail.
Oh, okay.
As word spreads of the shooting, over 10,000 people gather in the streets outside of the building.
Were they still using muskets at this time? Is that why he only shot
that
one shot?
King had been taken to, and murmurs begin to sweep through the crowd of a need for a second committee of vigilance.
Uh-oh.
James King dies from his
he
wound
didn't make
on May
it.
20th.
Nope,
And
he
just
didn't
2
make
days
it. So
later,
how did you know what he
shortly
said?
after his funeral service, 3,500 armed vigilantes dragged James Casey
3,500?
and Charles Cora out of jail and
3,500 vigilantes, 3,500 pulled up to the prison with rifles and demanded some of these people to be released. I'm not gonna lie to you. What was bro name at the very beginning that started the gold rush? You know, you started something crazy. You started a crazy movement, dog.
hanged them in front of the entire city. The Committee of Vigilance was back, and this time it was bigger than ever. Over the next few weeks, the committee stormed through every government building in the city, searching for evidence of corruption. The vigilantes find a number of rigged ballot boxes, which they displayed publicly as proof of election meddling they had suspected for years.
Election
They then
meddling?
not so subtly convince elected officials to resign from office. In an altercation with a California State Supreme Court
They're
justice,
different.
a vigilante is stabbed in the neck, and the committee takes the justice prisoner. This causes the federal government to call on a banker by the name of William Tecumseh Sherman to lead the local
William
militia to stop
who?
the committee and their insurrection. But Sherman soon found out that most of the local militia wanted to fight for the Committee of Vigilance, not him. And so he quickly resigned, citing the whole fight as a lost cause.
He's like, bro, I don't get paid enough to deal with this. The whole city want a box. The whole city want blood. I'm not rocking with this one.
The committee's membership rapidly swelled, and within the span of a few months, they had hanged 4 men, deported dozens more, and had essentially taken over the corrupt local government.
So they raided the government, became border patrol, and also became executioners. They're wow.
Installing their own political party, which they called the People's Party.
Right.
On August 11th, 1856, having cleaned up the city once again, the committee voted to disband for good.
And then they came together and disband for the betterment of the people. I'm not gonna lie, I don't think I've ever seen a vigilante group move as efficiently as they did, as together. It's like they actually just wanted the better for the people of the town. You know how some people, they get power and they start going crazy. They actually wanted their town to be better. That's crazy.
As a final act, 8,000 armed vigilantes dressed in uniform then paraded through the streets of San Francisco with cannons and floats as a grand farewell.
That's so hard.
The People's Party continued to manage the city until 1867. Oh, and if you're wondering what happened to Sam Brannan, the first millionaire of California
Yeah,
who
what happened to
started the
him?
gold rush, he was excommunicated by the Mormon Church for his participation in the first committee, and later his wife divorced him and left him penniless. Bro could have really used a prenup.
He started the movement and ended broke? Oh nah, bro, he went through a lot. Oh my goodness. Whoa. I'm guessing he got chased out of the first town because he was Mormon and he got kicked out of the first town. I don't know what happened in the first town for him to be chased out. Then the second town, he also got kicked out of this church because he was to join the vigilante as a Mormon. That's crazy. Yo started a vigilante group, became the first millionaire, and ended with nothing. That's nasty. Amazing video, serious history.